Welcome back to Arsenal Pass, it's Hayden here, and today I've got a deck tech that I'm stoked to be bringing you, to be honest. This is my Nationals winning deck tech from Australian Nationals over the weekend. Playing Viserai, one of my two favourite heroes. People probably know how much I really enjoy playing Reiner, but Viserai was one of the first decks that I played with Arcane Rising, a deck that I played a lot of, and was really happy once Viserai came back into the meta to be able to play this deck. And yeah, just overall stoked to take it to my national championship. So in the end, had an 8-1 record across Classic Constructed over the weekend with this deck that I'm going to break down in this video. One of the more sort of interesting, fun, complex decks that I've played in Flesh and Blood so far. It's a deck that really rewards knowing your lines, knowing how to pivot, understanding game states. I did find this deck both very difficult to test with and learn and tweak, and then also to play. But I think once you get into it and understand the play patterns and start to feel the game plan for this deck in particular and these Viserai builds in this particular meta, it feels really good. And it's a lot of fun to play as well. So the deck that I'm going to show you today is the Viserai deck. It's a hybrid sort of list. It has the OTK package, but it also has the ability to be a tempo deck, similar to what I actually showed on the channel back in November, end of October. We showed a few gameplays with the Viserai deck that I was working on then. I went to Orlando. Ultimately in Orlando, I ended up taking Briar. I actually had two decks with me when I went to Orlando in my backpack when I got on the plane. I had Viserai and I had Briar. I think if I had been more prepared to go to Orlando, I think I would have been on Viserai at that time as well. But you know, Nationals being where they are now afforded me the opportunity to test more, test harder, and test Viserai as much as I did. And a big shout out to first of all the team, the testing team, but in particular to Dan Mackay, who also played in New Zealand Nationals this past weekend. He's one of the big reasons that we ended up playing this deck. He was pretty early on testing it post-Nationals. He picked up Matt Rogers' list after Orlando calling and was pretty happy with what he was seeing and the game plans that it afforded. And I knew I was pretty keen to, if I couldn't play Reiner, I was pretty keen to play Viserai. So we sort of broke that deck down. But anyway, I won't go too much into it. If you want to hear more about it, we'll talk about it on the pod this week about how the sort of the deck came to be and where we came from and the influence from, you know, the Matt deck in Orlando and our deck that we had ready to take to Orlando as well. So anyway, in this video, I'm going to cover the deck. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the card choices, how the combo works as well. I'm going to break that down and just talk about the elements of the deck. So if you aren't familiar with this Viserai deck, don't worry. I'm going to break that down. And then I'm going to get into some more sort of complex lines, game plans, the way the deck plays out, how to play the deck basically as we go through it. And if you are interested in a full breakdown, sideboard plan, matchup plan, or sort of full written guide as we do with, if you're ever familiar with what we do on this channel with our other deck guides, then that will be up on our Patreon. I'm trying to get this video up as quickly as possible, so if people want to play this deck, they can get their hands on it. It'll probably be up in the 24 hours after this video goes up live, so make sure you check us out on patreon.com/ArsenalPass. Otherwise, you've got the deck guide here anyway, but if you do want that full breakdown, that's where it's going to be. So I'm going to start with what is the deck and talk a little bit about the different elements and the key engine that makes this deck what it is. So I want to start by breaking down what this deck is all about. At its core, this is effectively all about two cards in particular, Bloodchief Skelata and Sonata Arcanix, which is kind of your engine of this deck. You're looking to build up some rune chants at some point during the game, and you know how and when you build these rune chants up is really going to vary depending on the plan that you're on, and we're going to talk about those plans in a second. But at some point, yep, you're going to want to have a bunch of rune chants, and you build those through cards like Read the Runes, through Spellblade Assaults, and then you pop off with what we call the combo aspect of the deck, and have this big turn with Sonata Arcanix. Now, there's a couple of ways that this can sort of look like. So how does the combo work effectively? Well, you're trying to leverage the power of those rune chants that you have. You have these, you know, this damage that's effectively sitting there in a pile that you want to throw at your opponent. But we get to leverage the Bloodchief Skelata ability, which makes our next attack and non-attack action cost X less, where X is the number of rune chants we control. So what do we want? We effectively have a bunch of free resources. What are we going to do with all those free resources? Well, we can pump them into this card Sonata Arcanix, which costs XX and says reveal the top X plus 3 cards of your deck. Every non-attack action reveal this way, take an attack action reveal this way, and put it into your hand. So if we have 14 rune chants, we can use our Bloodchief Skelata. We can announce the cost, or the X, to be 7, which is going to cost us 14 on Sonata Arcanix, and then we get to see 10 cards. Now ideally, because our deck's going to be around 50-50 non-attack and attack actions, we're going to get 4 to 5 cards off that. So think about, we just drew 4 to 5 cards, Sonata deals 4 to 5 damage to our opponent, and we still get a reduction on our next card, and we get our whole hand, 7, possibly 8 cards after that to come in with. So it's a really big swing and a really big turn that you can set up with this. So a little example I like to use of just the power of Bloodchief Skelata is, say we have 5 rune chants. We could do something like a Slogism into a Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, because both the reductions count on that ninth blade of the Blood Oath. And that's a big turn. That's already, we're coming in for 20 plus damage off just that. But when we start to involve a card like Semi-OTK, well, our ceiling starts to get really, really high. So these two cards in particular are really the engine of what we're trying to do. And as we talk about the game plans more, we're going to get into that. Before I start to break down the core of the deck and how this kind of engine is supported by what is our 45 card core, I want to talk about the 3 game plans that we could enact as we go into a match with this deck. So just a quick overview. The first one we can get into is a tempo-based deck. This is really similar to the Viserai list that I showed back in November, October, where you're playing pretty proactively, turn to turn. You're not building up rune chants. You're basically just throwing damage at the opponent and really difficult damage to defend because you've got a few rune chants here, a few breakpoints of 4, things like that, and then you're coming in with Rosetta Thorn often. So really common play patterns are Mothrian Skies, Spellblade Assault, make some rune chants, have Go Again, come in with something like a Rune Flash maybe with Go Again, and then Rosetta Thorn. That's a really big turn off, only a couple of cards. That's pretty easily done. So that's kind of game plan 1. Game plan 2 is like a semi-OTK or a semi-1 turn kill. And this is where we do a little bit of that first step. We do a bit of tempo, try and get a bit of damage in, and then we stop and we build up those rune chants, ready to use with that Bloodshed Skeletta and ideally the Semi-OTK, but it could be something like a Rattlebones and a Ninth Blade. And I'll get into that more later. And then the third option is that we're getting into just a 1-turn kill, a full combo deck basically, where we're looking to be quite a bit more defensive and we're using our life total as a resource that we trade, give that life to our opponent in order to make rune chants until we get to a massive amount of rune chants that we can just go off with this 2-card combo, draw a bunch of cards, come in with a bunch of Go Again attacks and deal a bunch of damage. Can pretty easily deal, 40, 50, 60 plus damage in certain games where you're going for that 1-turn kill. But more on that later. Now, I want to break down the 45 card core of this deck and what makes this engine tick. So with the Viserai list right here in front of us actually that I played at Nationals, I had a 45 card core and then my sideboard. This is actually the 45 cards laid out right in front of you. And the main aim of this 45 is to be the engine for this, basically this Semi-OTK deck, this Viserai rune chant deck. And no matter what matchup I'm playing into, we're basically always playing these 45 cards and then bringing 15 cards in to supplement it, whether that be to be on one of the 3 plans that we talked about. So I want to go through and just talk about some of the reasons that we play these cards in the core and what they're doing to help support this engine and why they're always in. So I want to start with just a few facts about this deck and the 45 card core that you see in front of us. So we play 24 attack actions and 21 non-attack actions in the core, and then our sideboard of 15 cards helps us bring that up to around 50-50, depending on the cards we want for any given matchup. Outside of that, we also have 12 ways to make rune chants. So that's natural ways to make rune chants just within the core 45. That's not including Dread Triptych and Meet and Greet, which can also make rune chants with on-hit effects and on-play effects. And then as well as that, we have things like Mordred Tide and the Viserai Hero ability, which help us make even more rune chants when we play some of these rune chant makers. Outside of that, we play 18 blues in this 45 card core, but I'm basically always playing 20 blues. So we have another 4 in the sideboard, and we're always going up to 20, often playing 21, and in some cases even 22. In terms of ways to get Go Again, which is really important on that Sonata turn, because we're going to get a lot of attacks into our hand. We want those attacks to have Go Again, so we can go wide on our opponent, make more rune chants, deal damage, have awkward breakpoints. So the most important ways are our attack actions, Meet and Greet, and Rune Flash. But then we also have a card like Rattlebones, which gives us an action point at instant speed, because we're going to deal arcane damage off that Sonata. So those two pair really well on the combo turn. If you can have Rattlebones on the Sonata turn, you're going to be in really good shape. Often you're going to go and get your Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath because it deals so much damage. And then that's going to allow you to have the action point because you get to play Rattlebones at instant speed off the Sonata damage. Outside of that, I want to talk about some of the other cards in here. So these are the Go Again package here that I've kind of split out. Really easy to see. Enlightened Strike, Meet and Greet, Rune Flash, really important for our combo turns. These are our blues sitting in here. And you've got the attack actions here, non-attack actions here. And these non-attack actions right here. Become the Arknight is one of the most important cards in the deck. It turns your hand, that can be, basically it can be Mordred Tide 4 through 6. It could be Red Read the Runes 4 through 6. It can even be an attack action if you need it on the more tempo-based plan. It can be the Spellblade Assault you need. It can be the Rune Flash that you need to get the Go Again. It can be the Rattlebones. It can even be the Sonata for your combo turn. This card is so important. The fact it pitches blue, defends 3, costs 0, goes and finds the most important cards in your deck. It's you can't understate how important Become the Arknight is in the deck. Outside of that, if we shift across to the right-hand side here, well, we've got some of our rune chant makers in the middle here, the really important ones in the core, and we do have more in the sideboard, as I say. But Read the Runes, one of the most important. If you get to pair that with Mordred Tide on a turn, you're going to be in a good spot. Base by itself makes 6 rune chants, But if you can put in other things with that, then you can get more rune chance off the Viserai trigger, off the Mordred trigger. Maybe you have something like a Whisper first, so you get 7 rune chance. Maybe you become the Arknight after a Mordred. All sorts of crazy things that you can do to make a lot of rune chance. And then Spellblade Assault, just the best attack for making rune chance. If you've played a non-attack action before it, it's always going to make you 3. Play it with a Mordred, you're going to get 5. It's just a good proposition. And then our combo pieces around here. So Sonata Arcanix, Rattlebones, Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, really important for our combo turns. But it is important to remember that Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath can also just be played with a big stack of rune chance. You don't always need Sonata Arcanix to go off. If you're in a spot where you're playing more the tempo plan or that semi-OTK plan, often you're okay just to have, 8 or 9 rune chance there. We play a Rattlebones to go and get a Ninth Blade that's sitting in our graveyard. Or we play the Ninth Blade straight up out of hand. Maybe we then, after we've dealt arcane damage, we play the Rattlebones, we pick up a meet and greet, we come in with that, and then we come in with Sword at the end. It's a really big turn. We're looking at about 30 damage there, just from having 9 rune chance, the Ninth Blade, and a Rattlebones say. So some really big turns that you can do. It doesn't always have to be around Sonata, but when we're setting up for that 1-turn kill, generally that's Sonata. But one of the coolest things about this deck is it has so many different lines that you can go through, and I really encourage you, as you pick up this deck, to explore those and look at what those are. But what those cards generally revolve around: Rattlebones, Ninth Blade of Blood Oaths, Mordred Tides, and Become the Arknight. This kind of section over here is just the most important piece of the deck that we have to use at our disposal. Other than that, I just want to talk a little bit about the equipment. I'll bring those out now. We already talked about Bloodthirsty Skelata and the importance of that. Otherwise, we're basically always playing Grasp the Arknight and Arknight Skullcap as our kind of core equipment, allow us to block, keep up our, our cards in hand on the combo turn. Just gives us more life against aggro decks, especially if we're trying to combo, or into tempo decks, we just get to keep cards. And then we've got Spellbound Creepers, which is another one of the most important cards in the deck, and the card that really has brought Viserai, in my opinion, to sort of being one of the best decks in the format. And that allows us to get action points at instant speed off our non-attack actions. It turns some of these non-attack actions with really good effects, but also tags like a Malvern Skies onto them. It gives us that extra action point. This card's really important in our combo turn if we don't have Rattlebones. We need a non-attack action with that Sonata to make sure that after we play our Ninth Blade, which is generally the card we want to play after our Sonata, that we can boots a non-attack action. It could be Whisper of the Oracle, it could be Become the Arknight, it could be Mordred, which is honestly fantastic, so strong if you can do that. And then we get to play another attack. Then we get to play our Meet and Greet. Then we get to play our Rune Flash. We get to keep the chain going. So boots is really important. And then in the tempo plan, this is just going to help us get extra actions. Helps us play 5-card hands where maybe we don't have the Malvern Skies. Helps us play multiple attacks if we do have the Malvern Skies. Malvern Skies is great off creepers as well. So this card, one of the strongest equipment in the game right now, I think, and is really what is pushing this Viserai deck to be, all these Viserai lists in general to be some of the strongest decks in the format right now, I think. Time for the sideboard. So what have we got going on with our options that we get to bring in for all of our different matchups with this Viserai deck in Classic Constructed? Well, best place to start is we have our additional 4 blues over here. So as I said earlier, we're 18 blues in the core deck, but we're always going to go up to minimum 20. In some matchups, 21, even 22. And what that looks like is 3 blue Malvern Skies and blue Spellblade Strike. So the one extra action here just lets us get to good ratios. I've played around with having 2 extra blues and not having this Command and Conquer over here, as in 2 blue attacks, splitting it in different ways. But one of the really cool things is that those blues in the core are just really, really good. I want all of those. So there's not a lot of room to play with the blues, I think. I like the Spellblade Strike just because it makes rune chance. So if I open with that on turn 1, I have an attack that makes me some rune chance, which I think is quite important, especially if I can play a non-attack action before it and get a couple of rune chance. Other than that, if I kind of move right to left, one of the next things is we have 3 yellow Malvern Skies. So our package of 6 Malvern Skies here is what allows us to turn into that tempo style deck. So we have a 45 card core, we jam those 6 cards in, plus a few other attacks and stuff in here, and we get to play that tempo shell. And these cards are really, really important for that because they allow us to have those multiple attacks per turn, and they get us to engage with Rosetta Thorn, which is one of our most powerful sort of aspects that we have available to us when we play that tempo plan. We repeatedly get to come in with that Rosetta Thorn. Malvern Skies is really important. Outside of that, we have the 3 yellow Read the Runes, so an extra 3. We get to double our Read the Runes count. Ways to make rune chance, really important when we're going for that semi-OTK or OTK plan. Those are always coming in. Oath of the Arknight yellow is something that makes rune chance, but is also a non-attack action that defends for 3 and can actually pump our attacks up. So I really like, we can't play more than 3 blue Oath, so I play 1 yellow Oath and actually play around with playing more yellow Oath. I quite like the card quite a lot. It does a lot of work, especially when you're flexing between game plans. It can fill spots if you're trying to find other spots for different cards for certain matchups. So I really like Oath. It's a bit of a plug gap, which is great. In terms of next, we've got 3 Runeblood Barrier. So these are primarily being played into certain old-time lists and decks that are looking to basically have really big turns, but might have off turns. Because what you want to do with the Runeblood Barrier is you want to make sure that you don't lose a bunch of rune chants on those turns. So if you play it into aggro decks and you leak 1 or 2 rune chants, and then the next turn they just come in with another big turn, you don't really achieve anything. So we actually had a bit of a game plan that came up with against Chain. We felt that we had a bit of a flex plan against Chain. We'd bring the Runeblood Barriers in, and if they presented a 60-card deck, we actually felt we could fatigue the Chains in that matchup. Or what we would do is we would present the Runeblood Barrier, usually around Shackle 5, and if they didn't push into destroy our rune chants and take us down on rune chants, we could actually just combo off. You could actually just Sonata combo them the next turn. So they were kind of in a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation with the Runeblood Barriers, which we found really important around Shackle 4 or 5. Didn't make the matchup, amazing or anything, but it made it, I think, favorable for us with the plan we had. And if they set up for fatigue, like they had the Eclipse, they had things like that in the deck, then we would actually just pivot and we just play really aggressively, and we would use these Runeblood Barriers aggressively as possible, or we just defend with them or pitch them or whatever it might be. So that's kind of where they came in, and I played 2 to 3 against old time, depending on the old time strategy they were on, but especially if they were on, these control style decks, it's been pretty popular. In terms of other cards, we've got 4 other attack actions here. So you'll notice that we can only go up to 29 attack actions. And I did say earlier I prefer to play more non-attacks than attack actions, but also because we have this defensive package here. And when we're going against really aggressive decks or certain OTK strategies, we're going to bring some number of defense reactions in. So our ratio isn't going to be that we need 30 attacks and 30 non-attacks anyway. So we can go up to 29 if we need to with the Command and Conquer. The 3 red amplifiers. Amplify really important for that tempo plan that we talked about as before. A 6 attack for free when we've got the rune chance to do it. Morvern Skies, Amplify the Arknight for free. You can do some really sick 2 or 3 card hands with these big attacks, plus Rosetta Thorn or Meet and Greet, etc. So really important card there. And then these 9 defense reactions. Now, heading into the future, I would probably cut down on these, given just the Erratus to Briar and maybe Lightning Briar in particular is going to fall away. Into Earth Briar, I actually don't play all of these defense reactions, and that's why we have a bit of a split here. So I think Sigil of Suffering is quite bad into the Earth Briar decks because they're generally going to play a piece of Null, and they have the blues to pay for some stuff. So, or they might have a floating resource on a turn. So I don't really want to play the Sigils there. So if I know my opponent's on Mount Heroic Briar, I'm only playing 7 defense reactions. Allows me to be a bit more aggressive in their matchup. I think you can be a bit more aggressive, try and pressure them, because it kind of becomes a race between when they find Mount Heroic and when you can have a big turn. So I like to play more aggressive, Arsenal aggressive in that matchup, and be less defensive, basically. Reduced rune chants are phenomenal. They're just one of the best cards that we have available to us in the deck. It's just that some matchups we don't want to play them, so they sit in the sideboard here. But generally, any deck that wants to attack into us, I want to play these. I don't want defense reactions in the deck because they suck. You don't want to hit them off Sonata turns because it ruins your ratios. But these cards are so good. Defend for 4 and make a rune chant, so it advances your game plan and it stops your opponent's game plan as well. So these are really important. Other than that, yeah, the sinks, the 2 sigils, as I say, if we want to go to 9, but generally I'm at 6 to 7 and most of those kind of matchups anyway, or I'm just not playing the defense reactions at all. In the tempo plan, not playing them at all. Because as I say, they just hurt the game plan. And then I played 2 pieces of Null as well. So we felt that you could play 2 pieces of Null into Wizard and keep the boots. Boots allows you to be really aggressive on that tempo plan, and I think you need the boots in order to do that. So, and Scalata is really important as well, because you do probably still want to pop off like a 5 or 6 rune chant turn with Scalata, hopefully a Sonata, but there's other things you can do with like Rattlebones, etc. as well. Just means that if you pitch your blue the turn before, you still have resources to do something, which is really important. So we played 2 pieces. Crown always comes in the mirror, and then you have 2 pieces for Wizard. Last card, Gorganian Tome. Just a great card to cycle the deck. It's one of the best cards you can start a turn off with in Viserai, but the downside is that it doesn't defend. So certain matchups we aren't bringing this card in, but a lot of the time it is coming in. So that's the sideboard plan. I do now want to talk about those 3 game plans that I spoke about earlier, the game plans we have access to, and how to play this deck. Let's start with the tempo plan. So as I said earlier, tempo is all about tempo. Playing pretty aggressively, being on the front foot. You're not looking to build up rune chants for a big Scalata turn necessarily. You're just looking to come in and deal damage. But there is the opportunity that you can have a good Mordred Tide turn with a red read the runes, and you can build up a stack of 8 rune chants, and then you can use that next turn to come in with a 9th blade, Rattlebones off that. So Scalata is still important, it's sort of some work there. But these are the cards that I think are most important in that tempo plan. I've just kind of laid those out. The 6 Morven Skies we already talked about allow you to go wide in that tempo plan. Amplify the Arknight, 6 for nothing is fantastic in that plan, or 6 for 1 if you maybe have 2 rune chants off something like maybe a Spellblade Assault the turn before. Meet and greets and rune flashes for the go again are really important. We're trying to go wide. We're trying to throw awkward breakpoints. This breakpoint of 4 on meet and greet is so good. Threatening to make a rune charm if the opponent doesn't defend it. So are we getting a piece of equipment? Are we getting a defense reaction out of them? Probably if they're playing defense reactions, we wouldn't be playing the tempo plan, but could happen. Mordred Tide allows us to have these really big 5-cut hands where we go, Mordred Tide, Morven Skies, make 2 rune chants, Spellblade Assault, make 5 rune chants, come with a rune flash, make 2 more plus for free, then come in with Blade. We can be doing like 25 damage turns pretty easily. So Mordred Tide, just a really phenomenal card. It looks a bit innocuous sometimes, but it does a lot of work in this deck. And then Dread Triptych is just a pretty nutty card, can do a really similar, if not better, interpretation of Spellblade Assault. And if you have with Mordred Tide, it can get pretty out of hand. You can easily make 8 rune chants off this, which is pretty crazy. So that's the tempo plan. As I say, we want to be proactive. We want to try and put together often like really good 4 to 5 card hands, but we're also okay to play off like 2 or 3 card hands. Let's talk about the semi combo. There's sort of semi 1-turn kill plan that you can play with this deck. This falls, there's aspects of the tempo plan here. But really what we're trying to do is often get a little bit of damage in the start, maybe get the opponent around maybe 30 damage, and we can do that with those hands we looked at earlier, and you should play some number of Morven Skies to help that. Maybe not all 6, it's going to depend on if you want any defense reactions. If you're not playing the defense reactions, usually what's coming in is Morven Skies. They kind of take the same sort of slot, depending on the plan you want to get on. So in a sort of this semi-OTK plan, often you want some number, maybe a few defense reactions. Get in some damage up front, and then start to build up a rune chant count. You're using Read the Runes, getting somewhere around 12 to 14 rune chants, coming in with a really big turn with the likes of, Rattle Bones and Night's Blade, like we talked about earlier. If you're lucky enough, the Mordred Tide turn is fantastic as well. And then you're looking to, hopefully kill the opponent then. The other thing you could do is if you get a really good start, a really hot start, maybe on turn 1 you open with Mordred Tide plus Read the Runes. Definitely don't be passing up making 6 rune chants. That's fantastic. And then you've got a bit of a decision to make. If you draw a really aggressive hand after you pass the turn, well, maybe you just want to use that hand aggressively and come in with a big turn. Maybe you've got, Rune Flash and Meet and Greet and some good ways to make some rune chants on top of that. And, you could be dealing 20, 25 damage. That's fantastic. Probably come in aggressively. But if you draw a bit of a slower hand, maybe you've got another Read the Runes in there. Maybe you've got a defense reaction and no Morven Skies in the hand. Okay, well, in that case, let's just build on that rune chant. We're already at, 6 rune chants. Let's get to 14 rune chants. And then let's combo the opponent then. We can get them down to around 10 or 12 life, maybe less, 8 life, and then let's kill them from there. So you can do it one of 2 ways, and I often find that it really depends on the hands you draw, and one of the hardest things about this deck, and one of the things that you really need to get used to is when to be on certain game plans, when to pivot, when to assume the role that you need to for any given matchup, when to pull the trigger, and when not to pull the trigger. Some of the hardest things to do. One of my losses in Swiss, my only loss in CC, I had an opportunity to pull the trigger on the turn that my opponent came in for lethal by using my Spellbound Creepers at instant speed, which I decided not to do because I thought I could survive the turn. I did not survive the turn, and I died, and I maybe could have possibly won if I'd pulled the trigger. Unlikely, but it was the chance I had, and I didn't take it. So there's things like this that it's really hard to understand and really important when you play these semi-OTK and then into the OTK strategy, which we're going to talk about next. Last but certainly not least with this Viserai deck and game plans is the 1-turn kill, the full combo style that you have. Now, generally with this, and I say generally because it won't always go to plan, you might need to pivot, but the general game plan is we're going to play a bit more defensively. We're going to have some of these defense reactions in most likely. We're going to be looking to trade our life as a resource in order to keep cards to set up rune chant turns. So say the opponent comes in with, a 15 damage turn. Well, we might defend with 2 cards, and then on our turn we play Mordred Tide into Read the Runes. We're a third of the way there, probably on rune chants we want. Now, with the OTK combo, generally if you are going for a true OTK combo, you want more than that 14 number. That 14 number is really if you're looking to do damage either side of the combo. And a lot of matchups where you OTK, you might actually have to pivot into that, or it might be best to pivot into that. A lot of decks can't deal with your endgame, especially with a card like Spellbound Creepers, where you can start to get value and also use that Rosetta-thon, which is really important. But against other matchups, maybe like an old time, even certain Bravos, it actually might be better just to completely OTK them to try and, if you've got the time to build up and use that time to create resources and just take your time, craft the hands, maybe keep a defense reaction up for the Crippling Crush, for instance, then that's what you can do. You can take your time, get to 20 plus rune chants in a lot of cases. I find 24 is like a really sort of golden number against old time, for instance, if they're at 40 life, and then go off on that turn. One of the most important things you do have to be doing, though, is managing your deck. So as you start to build more and more rune chants, if you do it inefficiently, what's going to end up happening is that you're going to run out of non-attack actions. And that's why in these control matchups or these OTK plans, you actually often want to play more non-attack actions than attack actions, because what ends up happening is you play cards like Become the Arknight, you thin them out. Maybe you pitch your blue attack actions to make Rune Chance off Grasp, and you keep the non-attack actions to play. So you do need to be careful about the resources in your deck. During the finals and during any games I played, actually, and the finals coverage is up on YouTube if you do want to see it, but you'll see me checking my deck a lot when I'm playing this Viserai deck. And what I'm doing is checking, okay, what's left in my deck? How many attack actions versus non-attack actions, and which non-attack actions and attack actions are left? How realistically, what's the realistic chance that I'm going to draw in my next two hands the amount of Rune Chance? How many Rune Chance can I make over the next two hands? When is the time to pull the trigger? It's one of the hardest things to evaluate. So I do recommend just trying this, understanding what you want to do into each matchup. What's my plan? Am I the tempo? Am I the semi-OTK? Am I the full combo OTK? What do I want to do in each of those matchups? And learn it inside and out, and just try different lines. There's all sorts of kind of odd lines that can come up with those matchups. Anyway, before I wrap up, I do want to talk about some tips and tricks for the deck, just to help you maybe get that little edge, get a little bit better at playing these kind of, especially combo style decks, because not all the lines are super intuitive. Now, there's a number of things that I think are pretty important to keep in mind when playing Viserai, and the first one is going to be what game plan are you on. It's really important that you know which game plan you're on, the three we talked about, and generally how you want to play that match, and which cards come in for those reasons. As you alter and tweak the deck, what you're going to do is you're going to make your deck worse for certain matchups. So if you start bringing in defense reactions, it's going to be really hard to play that tempo plan. You're going to draw defense reactions that brick your turn, etc., etc. If you don't bring defense reactions in and you want to soak up damage and life, it's going to be hard if you don't have those defense reactions, and vice versa. So, when you play full OTK, you don't have to have the defense reactions in, especially against a deck like Old Time, but you might want some depending on what plan they're on, and it's just important to understand, what each card you bring in, what effect is it having. And that leads me on to ratios. That non-attack versus attack ratio is really important. Of course, the more defense reactions you put in, the worse your Sonatas get, so the more Rune Chance I typically want in order to make sure that plan goes off. But also, just think about, well, how many attacks coming in? How many non-attacks coming in? Where does my ratio sit? And then keep thinking about that during the game. How many, if I already played 17 non-attack actions, wow, I'm in scary territory here. I probably need to pull the trigger soon, find this turn, find a big turn. Or I just need to, maybe I can't find Sonata. I need to find Rattlebones plus Ninth Blade and just go for it. So really important to keep in mind. Which leads me to sort of some other important cards for your Sonata turn. It isn't just about Sonata Arcanix and Bloodsheath Skelata. I talked about the Rattlebones already, but one of the most important cards to have on that Bloodsheath Skelata turn is Rattlebones. If you don't have that Rattlebones, you're going to need any other non-attack action that says go again on it, so that you can use the Spellbound Creepers to gain an action point after you play your Ninth Blade. Now, Ninth Blade is one of the most important cards for the combo turn. Ideally, you don't always need this, but it's going to be the most efficient if you can, especially if the non-attack to go with it. You need that. So you can either Rattlebones the Ninth Blade after you play Sonata because you've dealt arcane damage. Rattlebones can be played at instant speed and gets you that extra action point. Come in with Ninth Blade, you've still got another action point. The other way is just play Ninth Blade. You get it off the Sonata, or you already have it in hand and you play the Ninth Blade, and then you boots in a non-attack action like Mordred Tide, Whisper, Oath of the Arknight, Movrin Skies, whatever it is, and then you play your Go Again actions after that. So you play your Meet and Greets, your Rune Flashes, your E-Strikes with Go Again, and then usually you're finishing the chain off with a Blade, or maybe if you've got exact resources and the right attacks in hand and not enough Go Again, you finish off with like a Spellblade Assault, for instance. The best non-attack action to have on your combo turn that isn't Rattlebones, if you can't have the Rattlebones, is Mordred Tide. It's going to continue to build up Rune Chance as you go across that chain. So if we play a Mordred Tide off of the boots after a Ninth Blade, and then we play, say, 2 more attacks, that's 4 more Rune Chance on top of that. What's even better is if you have Rattlebones and Mordred Tide when you go off, the best 4-card hand you can kind of have is Sonata, Rattlebones, Mordred Tide, and then either a blue resource card or maybe the Oath of the Arknight to guarantee it. And then you're really cooking. You can actually play that Mordred Tide first, and then when you play the Ninth, you play the Sonata, that's 2 Rune Chance, Ninth Blade, that's 4, play the Rattlebones, that's 6, get the card, 8, 10 for the next attack, 12 for the next attack. A lot of damage comes from that Mordred Tide if you can. And, it's going from, say, maybe 6 extra Rune Chance to 12. It's doubling, of course, because of Mordred Tide. Other things to keep in mind is attack actions that go again. So it is possible on your Sonata turn that you completely whiff on attack actions that say go again, especially if you've already defended with a chunk of them, and they're sitting in your graveyard. You can also just whiff on them. So it's really important to understand, okay, what am I going to do if that happens? Do I have a Movrin Skies maybe? That card can be really important as well. So I can boots Movrin Skies, and that's going to actually give me 2 actions: the go again, and then the extra action point from the go again off the Movrin Skies itself. So Really important to keep in mind what sort of cards you're looking for, depending on what your deck's looking at like, and what the sort of probability of cards you hit is going to be. Defense reactions, they're not great. You really don't want them in the deck if you can avoid them, but in certain matchups you need to play them. And Reduce to Rune Chant is really, it is good, and I do want to play those in some matchups, but the more defense reactions you put in, the worse your Sonatas get. Rosetta's amazing. Don't forget about that card, especially in the tempo plan. It can just blow people out. And even if you sort of combo people and get them to around 8 to 10 life, often Rosetta combined with Spellbound Creepers and 4 or 5 card hands is just enough to clean out your opponent. Creepers, again, phenomenal card. Don't forget about that card and how you want to utilize it. Try and plan out how you're going to utilize it, and try and keep that around if you can. The good thing is that it helps you play or activate Rosetta Thorn, so that's a really good way to keep it around. Don't undervalue the power of Ninth Blade by itself. Like I talked about earlier, if you don't have that Sonata, it's not always going to be a be all end all. Sometimes you just have 8 or 9 rune chants and you just slap down Modern Skies into a Ninth Blade. Maybe you then come in with a Rune Flash into the weapon. 30 damage right there pretty easily. So don't underestimate the power that you can have just on maybe a Rattlebones or a Ninth Blade turn with something like a Modern Skies and a lot of rune chants. Learn your lines. That'd be my last thing. If you just pick up this deck and want to play it, and hopefully, I'm hoping this is going to be still good with the Everfest and I get to play some more Viserai, but just pick it up and play it. Just learn it. As I say, there's no match feels the same. You can play the same matchup 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a row, and all the micro decisions that you make, all the lines you have to play based on the cards you draw, the way that you get the rune chant hands or the attack hands, what your opponent does, it all changes, and there's all these little micro decisions you need to make. So the deck is super fun, it's super rewarding, but it does take time and just a bit of thought and planning in order to get the most out of it. Before I close out this video, I do want to talk about the future of Viserai and just some of the considerations with the deck list that I've got here and what I play for Nationals. So there's a few flex spots in the deck, as I spoke about at the top of the video, and I did just want to point those out if you're looking to maybe do some changes, tweak this heading into the Everfest format. Now the first one is the Null-Rune. I would always play the Crown Dichotomy because of the mirror. But the Null-Rune gloves, was a decision that we made. We wanted the second piece of Null-Rune against Wizard. The extra 3 defense reactions, so defense reactions 7 to 9. In the past, when I've played Viserai, I've tended to play 5 to 6 defense reactions. I think with Lightning Briar, it made sense to play 9, but as I say, they make the Sonatas worse. They make your tempo hands worse. So, I really don't want to be playing these if I can avoid it. And I think into Mount Heroic, especially heading forward, I actually want to be more proactive against them anyway. Command and Conquer was our 29th attack action. I don't love the card, to be honest. I think it's pretty poor in the deck. I basically, I never played this card over the weekend at all. I used it to pop a Phantasm on a Prism once, and I had it in my deck against Ranger, but never played it. It's whatever. We had none in the deck at one point. We just didn't feel there was another attack action that we particularly wanted to play over it, and it was good against Prism, being a 6 attack, and it has some potential to be useful versus Ranger, so we ended up running it. The Oath of the Arknight, I really, really like this card, but it is a flex spot. I could actually see myself playing all 3 or maybe 2 of these. The Modern Skies, this really is about the tempo plan, but if you feel that you want to play more of an OTK or semi-OTK plan, you don't necessarily need to play these, especially if there's not much Prism in your meta, which is one of the matchups where you do need to be really proactive. But if there's less of that, maybe there's no Rhinar, which is another matchup where you need to be proactive. Dash as well, I think you need to be quite proactive. If you don't have those in the meta, you can just play into an OTK plan, and it's not the worst thing, so you probably don't need those. The Runeblood Barriers, as I say, that was for us really about, to be honest, Chain was the biggest reason we played the Runeblood Barriers, and then also into Ultimes. Thought there was going to be a lot of control-based Ultims. Just allows you to, when you're under such little pressure, it allows you to make a lot of rune chants. You can always make sure that you have a reduced rune chant in your arsenal or a defense reaction. When you play this, you don't get blown out on those turns. But those are the flex spots that you could look at moving forward. Cards we didn't play Reaping Blade. We tested the life gain sort of strategies with Guardian. We felt that we could beat it with Rosetta Thorn. You actually saw in my final match, my opponent went up to 53. If you did catch my finals of Australian Nationals, went up to 53 on Ultim. Was able to amass enough rune chants in a big combo turn to put him to 4 and then kill him the following turn. Other cards we didn't play, we reduced the number of Command and Conquers. People have tended to play sort of 2, 3 Command and Conquers in their decks. And then you've just got maybe one blue spot that you could play around with, I think. But the rest of the deck, I think, is pretty tight. And I wouldn't mess with it. You could play red Modern Skies as well as yellow and blue if you want to be sort of really on that tempo plan. Maybe you don't like OTK as much, or your meta is shifting towards Dash and Rhinar and these decks that you need to be more proactive against. And you could even play Consuming Volition as well, which is a really strong card, I think, in these builds where you can have that on-hit effect. So that's probably what I'd be looking at. Other than that, I'm going to close it out. I did just want to say a big thank you to everyone who sent me some really fantastic messages and words of support over the weekend for Australian Nationals. If you do want to find the full breakdown of this sort of deck guide and sideboarding plan for each matchup that we used, myself and Dan, for Nationals, you can find that on the Arsenal Pass Patreon. And yeah, other than that, we'll see you in the next video.